Okay, we are back and we are blocking in our values part 1 with matte medium. And what I'm doing is creating a value scale from light to dark with my Cadmium Red Light in the middle. And on the outside, you can see that I created a toned down version, and underneath is a shaded version of my Cadmium Red. So what does that mean? Tint is when you add white, toned is when it's a mixture of gray, and shades are when you add black to your hue. And by having them in order like that from light to dark, it just helps me figure out my value scale and how to create really like nice gradients that go from one spot to another. And one thing I did notice about Cadmium Red Light is that it dries pretty quickly. So I'm gonna have to keep on checking throughout the video to see how my paint is drying, because you'll be able to tell that after a while the paint will start to dry up, and the best thing to do at that point in time is just to start over, remix, and it doesn't really matter if it's exactly the same because we're only using Cadmium Red Light anyhow. And I begin every portrait by finding my darkest values, and I mean, it's not an absolute to do it this way. I think it's just actually easier to do it this way, because once you have your darkest values in, then you can start working from dark to light, and it automatically creates this like structure, shape, and it really is a lot easier for you as an artist, especially a beginner artist. Anytime you can come up with a process, it means that knowing what your next step is going to be means that you're more likely to complete a portrait than not. So having a process, I think, is essential for artists. Otherwise, you can get so lost wondering like how you're going to finish it. Is it finished? Not knowing if you should add anything else. And I don't know about you, but I've definitely been in places where like I feel so like, oh my gosh, am I done? I have no idea. After I developed a process from start to finish, knowing that I first block in my values with my value scale and my local color, and then after that I do kind of like a medium glazing color glaze, and then after that I do my fine detail glazing. This process has seriously made my painting like my sitting for a painting way faster from start to finish. I used to spend months. One painting I spent almost a year working on, and it wasn't even like that big, but I just only focused on one little part at a time, and then I would move to the next part and then the next part, and then eventually when I was done with the painting, it kind of looked like a bunch of puzzle pieces that were put together next to each other instead of a cohesive piece. This kind of eliminates that. So right now, like, imagine that this was a painting not just of his face, but an entire, maybe like an added landscape or an added storyline in the background, and he was one element of that. I would probably tackle that in a similar way, although I would probably do the whole thing in a grisaille, a grayscale grisaille. And a grayscale grisaille is just like, think of it almost like a black and white paint or photograph. And I do 2 grayscale grisailles in this class, and they are portraits 5 and 6. So if you're interested in doing that, definitely check those out. I would start off with a grisaille doing for the painting, because then you're only focusing on your values. And the values, again, are your lightness, your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows. Once you get that in, and you start to find your local colors for things, then everything starts to look like they belong. But you don't want to jump around when you're working too much, in my personal opinion. I know that there's no right way to do paintings either. I just found that this has been the most successful way for me to create realism. But by not jumping around and just sticking to, okay, today I'm only doing this, and then tomorrow I'm going to add a glaze to everything, maybe only using one specific color, but for the whole thing. Everything starts to belong in the same world because it's similar to the world that we live in. This background, all this environment is affected not only by the light and the light back here, but it's affected by the nighttime. So it would be a little bit odd if I was painting this scene and it looked like maybe I was daytime and different colors were like neon. But here's the thing, as an artist, you can choose to do that on purpose. But there is a difference between choosing a style than having a style forced upon you and it wasn't what you intended it to be. Do you know what I mean by that? If you're intentionally creating a style, like intentionally playing with lighting and color, then that is usually because you know how things work with one another and you decide to break those rules. But before you break those rules, you really kind of want to understand, like, how, I think I said it already, but just how everything works with each other. And I really do think that by the end of this class, you'll get a great understanding to help you, like if you wanted to start breaking those rules right away, I don't see why you wouldn't know how to do that after watching this class. Okay, at the moment, I'm starting to add in some of my lighter values and I'm going to my very top one. And I think it's kind of cool about this piece in particular is because he has a lot of character to his face, that you can go really light and dark with your first layer with someone who has a lot of character on their face. And the reason why is because later on you can soften all of those wrinkles by adding more layers, and each layer is transparent to a sense. So the more layers you add, your bottom layer will soften out. So I think with someone with a lot of wrinkles or with a lot of character or scars, anything that might create like a ripple in the skin or whatever, it's best to kind of go heavy with your contrast with your first primary layer. Then afterwards, once you have all those contrasting shadows in to begin with and the really dark wrinkles where they need to be, then it will be way easier to soften it later. With someone with very smooth skin, as you'll see in the next portrait, it's best to almost not go so high contrast and really focus on the middle values. So like if you're looking at the screen right now, the middle values would be like not the brightest light color and not the darkest black color. It would be the ones in the middle, because when you're working with smooth skin, there's not that much shadow. The gradient should be very kind of close together. And I really do believe that that middle scale is where you find true realism. Let's see how we're doing right now. What's going on? Okay, good. It's rare that I actually do something that I'm like supposed to do, and that is cleaning my palette and remixing my paint because I know that the paint has dried. But it looks like I may have been done with my session for that night because I'm applying a clear leveling gel. A clear leveling gel just kind of evens everything out, but huge word of advice, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is to not put your leveling gel on until your painting is completely dry. And you will find out in Portrait 4 when I make tons of mistakes. Okay, let's move on to our next video. I will see you there.